Welcome to our daily Forex market analysis, and this is for trading on May the 20th, 2020. Just a quick disclaimer here before we get started. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. As usual, we'll start off by taking a look at our calendar here. In terms of the data that we saw mixed data here for British pound. The unemployment rate wasn't quite as bad as what was expected, but the rest of the numbers were not that great. And coming up here, we have machinery orders for yen. And then tomorrow, on Wednesday, we have CPI numbers here for British pound, and we see that the inflation numbers are expected to drop. Now, if the drop is bigger than what's expected here, we could see a drop in British pound. Also, in terms of UK, we also saw comments today that in regards to the Brexit negotiations, they were not going that well. There was they weren't even close to an agreement at this point. And so if we hear more of those type of comments in regards to Brexit, that could also be negative for British pound. So keep an eye on that. We also have CPI numbers here for Eurozone. At this point, they're expected to stay the same. And if that's the case, I wouldn't expect much of a move. But should they come in worse than expected, that will have a negative impact on the euro. Same thing here. We have CPI numbers for Canada as well. And coming up on Wednesday, we also have Bank of England Governor Bailey speaking here. And we have been hearing from various MPC members talking about a potential of negative interest rates. And if we hear anything about negative interest rates from Governor Bailey here, that will be negative for British pound. And also we have consumer confidence numbers here. So we saw that the ZEW economic numbers here came in positive, much better than expected for Eurozone. So if the consumer confidence numbers improves as well, that will be positive for the euro. And in the Asian session, we have PMI numbers out of Australia. So in regards to Australia here, we are seeing an escalation of negative sentiment between Australia and China. And there seems to be more tariffs that are being placed by China on Australian goods. So that can prove to be negative for Australian dollars. So we'll have to watch how things go over the next few weeks. If we see that there is that struggle between the two countries, we'll have to keep an eye on Australian dollar, because we could see that slip as a result of the additional tariffs, because Australian economy is quite tied into the Chinese economy, because Australia gets a lot of travelers from China. They also there are a lot of people who come in for universities to Australia. And there's also a lot of trade that happens between the two countries because of the close proximity of the two countries. So if we see that there are tensions between the two countries, that will be negative for Australian dollar. And of course, we have RBA Governor Lau speaking. Oh, and also we have trade balance numbers as well as PMI numbers here for Japan. Another thing we have been seeing with Japanese yen or Japan in general is that Bank of Japan has been out, and they have been quite vocal about the negative forecast for the economy. They have been talking about how much QE they're going to do, the quantitative easing. Now, they have also called an emergency meeting that was announced earlier today for May 22nd. So they are looking at extending their quantitative easing program. So that is negative for the currency. It's positive for the stock market, but anytime the government is printing money, essentially, it's negative for the currency. And that's why we have seen Japanese yen weaken so much. So let's go on to, other than that, another thing that we saw or heard today was that vaccine here. The vaccine, Moderna had actually announced that their phase 1 of human trials had gone quite successfully. And as a result of that, we saw the stocks in that company shoot up. However, now we have heard from Stat News, and they are saying that the data that is required to basically verify whether these tests were successful or not is not sufficient. So it doesn't really, it's hard for anybody else to assess if actually what they're saying is correct or not. So as a result of that, we have seen all that positive sentiment that was in the stock market as a result of the phase 1 trials for the vaccine being successful. We saw that shift around a bit. However, Japanese yen has not benefited from that, just because Bank of Japan has been very, very vocal, and they have been trying to intervene, verbally intervene in the market, which is what they tend to do. So because of that, Japanese yen hasn't benefited, but we have seen the stock markets drop. So if the stock markets do go back into the risk off sentiment again tomorrow, then we'll have to be careful with all the yen crosses as well, because they could drop. So let's go on to our charts. As usual, we'll start off with euro dollar here. So for euro dollar, we saw the price went into 1.0980 level here, and from there it has dropped. So for now, the bias is bearish here. We have a pin bar, so I'm looking for price to drop. Now, prior to the drop though, I would watch out for a pullback, potentially into 1.0940 level. So bearish bias for euro dollar. And in terms of our targets here, the first target is 1.08. 90, and then below that we're looking at 1.0850. So bearish bias here for euro dollar. Pound dollar here, this one is still looking bullish. We see that we see a bullishness in the candle body here. Now also keep in mind though, prices into a resistance here. So this is where our support resistance level is. So if price is not able to break above today's high, we could see it turn. But for now, there is bullishness in it. So the next target here is 1.2350. And should it go above that, we're looking at 1.2390. So bullish bias here for pound dollar. Aussie dollar here, we have a pin bar here as well. We see that price went into the resistance here, and we have a triple top formation. Price hasn't been able to hold above the resistance. So this gives me a bearish bias for this. I will look for a bit of a pullback, potentially into 0.6550 level, and then looking for a drop back down towards the bottom of the range. So this one has been range bound. I'm looking for, we have already seen the rejection, so I'm looking for a drop here. In terms of our targets here, first target is 0.6480 and then 0.6400. So bearish bias for Aussie dollar. New Zealand dollar here, this one still has bullishness in it. We did see the move to the upside, and price has dropped since then, but there's still bullishness in the candle. So what I'm looking for here, so bias is bullish here. The first target would be the top of today's move, which is 0.6120. And if price does not hold above that level, I would look for a drop from there, because this is an important support resistance level. And if price is not able to break it 2 days in a row, chances are very high that we are looking for a price drop in that case. So in terms of the targets here, the first target is 0.6120, and only if it goes through that would I be looking for 0.6160. So bullish bias here for New Zealand dollar. Now, if it holds below this 0.6120, then I'm looking for price to drop further. And in that case, the first target would be the bottom of today's candle, 0.6030. and then below that we could see it come back down into 0.5980. So right now the important level to watch would be the high of today, and as long as it's staying below, I would look for a drop there. So bullish to slightly neutral bias here for New Zealand dollar. Dollar CAD here, this one is interesting. We see that price did drop here and then it has pulled back. With this one here, I am neutral. So what I'm looking for here is to see if price will hold below 1.3970, and if it does, then I'm looking for a drop here. Now, if for some reason it does go through, then of course we're looking for a move back into the range. So for now, I am a neutral on dollar CAD. As long as it holds below 1.3970, I will look for a drop. Silver here, silver has made a move higher, hasn't quite broken the high though. So that's why even with the bullish candle close, my bias here is neutral. Now, for some reason, if we see enough buyers come into the market and if price breaks through the resistance, we could see it go higher. So do keep that in mind, because we are into important resistance, and if it breaks, then we have a lot of room here to the upside. So price has basically, this inefficient move here got filled here. It's filled everything. And now we are into resistance. So at this point, I will look for price to retest the high at 17.50. If it holds below, I'm looking for a move back down here. So as we can see, price has not been able to break the high of the day. And as long as it holds below that level, I'm looking for a drop here. So right now, neutral bias for silver. If it goes through though, next target would be 17.85 and then 18.15. So for now, neutral bias for silver. Gold here, gold pulled back the way we were looking for it to pull back. Now today's candle close is bullish. At this point, I am neutral on this. So even though we do have a bullish candle close, we have to be careful because price is right into resistance here. And last time price was at this level, it dropped before it continued on. So I would watch out for this resistance at 1750. And if price goes through this level, then I'm looking for a retest of the high at 1765. But if for some reason it's not able to break through the resistance, we could see move back down. So I would be careful with this one. So my bias here is neutral, and I'm going to watch what happens with the resistance here. Oil here, oil is interesting. It hasn't really done a whole lot. We have a bit of a pullback. It's still holding the highs here. So at this point, I'm neutral. I would look for maybe a bit more of a pullback here into 30.50. And then if it holds above that, I will look for a further move to the upside. So oil, the bias for oil here is neutral. Copper here, copper went into the resistance. And as we see, it wasn't able to break through that level, and we have a bit of a bearish candle close. So the bearish candle here is not very strong, and as such, watch out for a retest of the high. So if price retests the high and still holds below, then I'm looking for a potential drop here. So for now, bias is neutral. I'm looking for a bit of a pullback, and then as long as it holds below, looking for a drop back into 2.34. And then second target from there would be 2.33. So neutral to bearish bias here for copper. Bitcoin here, Bitcoin is stuck in this range here for the last several days here. We see, especially for the last couple of days here, price hasn't really done a whole lot. It's just stuck sideways. So bias is neutral for this. And as long as it holds below 99.35, I am just looking for a sideways move here for Bitcoin. So neutral bias here for Bitcoin. Now, because this is an important resistance level, if it does go through that, next target here is 10,000. So neutral bias here for Bitcoin. S&P 500, we have a bearish pin bar here. As we can see, price went right into the resistance here, and then we saw this rejection and price has dropped. So bias here is bearish. And in terms of the target, I would look for, first target is 28.85, and then below that 28.50. So bias is bearish here for S&P 500. NASDAQ, same thing here. We see that price went into our first target from yesterday, and then we have a bit of a drop from there. So right now, bias is bearish. I'm looking for a drop. Now, do watch out for the pullback, first into 93.50, and then looking for a drop here. And in terms of the targets, first target is 91.50, and then we have 90.50, so bearish bias for NASDAQ. And Dow Jones here, same thing. We see that price went into resistance here, wasn't able to break through, and it has dropped from there. So now I am looking for a bearish move here. Now, in terms of the pullback, we could get a pullback into 24,450. So keep an eye at that level. But bias is bearish, and I'm looking for a drop. So in this case, the targets are, first target is 23,840, and then we're looking at 23,550. So bearish bias for Dow Jones as well. DAX here, this one's looking bearish as well. And in this case, the first target here is 10,820, and then we're looking at 10,600. So bias is bearish for DAX. And FTSE as well, we see that it went up a bit, and then we have this drop. So looking for a further drop here, bias is bearish. 58.80 is the first target, and then 57.50 is the second target here. And last here, we have Nikkei. Nikkei is also looking bearish. We see that price went into resistance, wasn't able to break it. This is the resistance level that we have. Wasn't able to break it, and now we have a bearish candle close. So for this one as well, I will look for a bit of a pullback and then a drop here. So bias is bearish. First target is 20,200, and then below that we have 19,950. So bearish bias here for Nikkei as well. And so that's it for today. You guys have a wonderful trading day, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.